first of all, the question is what happened. So the Supreme Court, um, somebody leaked a draft opinion. So the case was originally heard on December 1st. Um, we were there for the oral arguments, and around about a week later, the court normally sits and takes their initial votes on where they are on the case. And apparently at that time, there were votes to overturn Roe versus Wade. And Justice Clarence Thomas, being the senior member, I'm sure, on that side, he then assigned the case to Justice Alito, who got started working on a draft of the opinion. That first draft of that opinion was then circulated to the other justices in February. Um, and of course, none of us knew about it because it was happening behind closed doors until yesterday when that was released or leaked from the Supreme Court. And we got to see a first draft of a majority opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court, which showed that the court, at least at the time of their initial vote, at least at the time of the first draft of the opinion, the majority of the court was in favor of overturning Roe versus Wade. So that's very interesting and very encouraging. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But this is really it shows us that at least in February, the votes were there to overturn Roe versus Wade, which is really good. This is unprecedented as far as the number of people. As far as leaking a opinion, I've never heard of that happening. That is completely unprecedented. I saw Chief Justice Roberts was potentially bringing the FBI in to investigate that because that is extremely unprecedented. So what's going on here? Who leaked this opinion? It's possible that it was a Republican appointed justice, maybe just to float it. Maybe they're not sure of their vote and they floated it out there just as a trial balloon, see what the reaction would be. Seems unlikely, but it's a possibility. It could also be a Republican appointed justice who wants to see, you want to lock in one of their colleagues' votes. Maybe a colleague is kind of being a little unsure of their vote, so they want to lock it in by releasing it to the public, and that hopefully keep them from flip-flopping. That's also another possibility. Again, unlikely though. I think the most likely possibility is that this was a Democrat-appointed justice who leaked the opinion really as a last-ditch effort. They saw the writing on the wall, and this was really an act of desperation that they were willing to sacrifice even the respect of their colleagues, perhaps not just break etiquette, but potentially break law here in order to release and leak this opinion out with the purpose of putting pressure on the other justices to change their votes. I think that's the most likely explanation for what's happening. Again, we don't really know for sure, though, but that's what it looks like. So, of course, the pressure is going to come, and it's already building now, and really it could even get very dangerous for the justices. So whoever did this, again, saw it as a last-ditch effort and saw it as worth putting their fellow justices' lives at risk and our country at risk in order to do this. Because, again, releasing the vote before it's final, some people could interpret that as giving them an opportunity to perhaps change the makeup of the court with violence in the meantime, God forbid. And we pray against that. So it's a very dangerous thing, though, to be releasing this early, but somebody did it. So what does it mean? It means that at least in February, the votes were there to overturn Roe versus Wade, which is a good thing. Ultimately, though, we need to realize that it doesn't mean anything yet. It is just a first draft. The justices can change their votes up until the moment, of releasing their decision. So this is simply a first draft. This is where the votes are initially and to overturn Roe versus Wade, and that's good. That's what we want. We want to overturn Roe, but it's not over till it's over. And so we need to be careful about celebrating too early here. We do need to also, point out that, what we really want, and we submitted a brief here in this case, as many of you are aware, through the Foundation to Abolish Abortion. We actually have it with me. We submitted a brief to the U.S. Supreme Court here. Foundation to Abolish Abortion, 20 other organizations, 20 state legislatures across the country. And we made three arguments. And our very first argument was, Supreme Court, you need to do your duty before God and under the Constitution and overturn Roe versus Wade. And so it looks like that's what they're doing. And so we're grateful for that. We hope that's what they end up doing. Now, we also went further in what we were urging the court to do. We urged them not just to overturn Roe, but also to return it to, not just to return it to the states, which I'll talk more about in a moment, but to go even further and define under the 14th Amendment that a person includes a preborn child from the moment of fertilization. And so then every state would be required to provide equal protection. That's what we were asking the court to find. Unfortunately, nobody was really asking for that other than us. Mississippi was not asking for that, and there may have been another amicus brief or two that were asking for that, but the parties were not. They were essentially saying, the parties that were trying to get the Mississippi case upheld, they were saying that no, the Constitution is neutral on abortion, and we don't think it's neutral. We think it's very much on the side of protecting life. But that's at least this draft is showing that the court is leaning toward that argument that it is that the Constitution is neutral. So, but at the very least, they are, it looks like, leaning toward overturn Roe versus Wade, which is really good. That doesn't provide equal protection, and it certainly doesn't mean that abortion is abolished anywhere, really, because all this decision, if this ends up being the final decision of the court, it would simply return the issue, not to the states necessarily, although I think that's where it should be, uh, um, but it would return it to the people's representatives, is what the current draft opinion says. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's returning to the states, returning to the states," but it's not, because the very first place that this fight is going to be happening is in Congress, because right now, the presidency and the two branches of Congress are all held by the Democratic Party, and they're going to be fighting to codify Roe versus Wade in federal law and statute, in order to make it basically continue the legacy of Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court said, "Hey, we don't really have at least under this draft opinion, they're saying like, hey, we don't have an opinion one way or the other. We leave it up to you people to vote and decide. We're staying out of this. Constitution doesn't have anything to do with this." So that's not necessarily a great thing with the Democrats holding control of the branches. Now, could Congress do that? Would they do that? I don't know. But it's certainly something that I think they will be pushing for and pushing to try. It's, the other thing about Texas, talking about Texas specific, in Texas, again, this would not abolish all abortions. This very likely would, if the Supreme Court rules this way, trigger the trigger law, the trigger bill in Texas, and it would outlaw abortions for some people, and it would make it a first degree felony for someone to commit an abortion in Texas, which is still short of equal protection, right? Because if you commit homicide of a born person, it's a capital felony, or could be a capital felony if it's the person under 10 years old, or if you hire someone to do it, which is what abortions are. It's a capital felony, so it falls short of equal protection as far as the penalty, but it's still a very stiff penalty. But where it really falls short of equal protection is that the trigger bill explicitly excludes mothers from its coverage, from making it illegal for mothers, and says that they cannot be prosecuted or even civilly found liable for the death of their child. So I saw somebody earlier today saying that this would outlaw all abortions in Texas because of the trigger bill, and that's just not accurate. In fact, every baby in Texas could still be aborted, could still be murdered, just not by an abortionist. Could still be murdered by the mother. And sadly, there's more than 2,300 abortions taking place in this country every day on average, and very few of those are forced abortions. Most of those are mothers willfully taking their children to be murdered, and that demand is not going to go away. And we've made it legal under our laws, even explicitly under the trigger bill in Texas, for mothers to do that. And so that's not equal protection. For someone to have a license to kill me, that's not equal protection. For someone, that's not the laws. Same laws that protect me are not protecting babies before they're born. No one has a license to kill me with impunity if I'm innocent. And it shouldn't be that way for preborn children either. Their mothers should not have that right. But unfortunately, under Texas law and under the laws of pretty much every state, they do. So certainly it's not going to abolish all abortions. And in some ways, it doesn't abolish any abortions, since abortion is still legal for mothers across the country. And as we've already seen after the heartbeat bill passage in Texas, we're going to continue to see an explosion of what are called self-managed abortions, or that is mothers performing their own abortions. So, we need to be we need to be sober-minded as we talk about this. It does not provide equal protection, like the abolition bills that we've introduced in Texas in 2017, 2019, 2021, that we've introduced through Abolish Abortion Texas, and legislatures here in Texas have introduced, would have provided equal protection and would have ignored Roe, and would have abortion really would be abolished. But unfortunately, even if the Supreme Court does do this, it still doesn't abolish abortion in Texas. It just sent it to the people's representatives. And at the moment, it doesn't mean anything because it's just the first draft. That said, it is encouraging. I don't want to deny that. I don't want to undersell that. This is very encouraging. It's not what it should be, but it's getting there. So I do celebrate that aspect of it. What should we do in the short term? Pray. Pray for the justices. Pray that they'll stand firm. Pray that they'll get even more firm and more consistent in protecting life by providing equal protection. But even as far as they've come, pray that they would stand firm. And, they're going to be getting a lot of pressure, even threats of violence. And so we need to be praying for them, for their safety. And we need to be putting our own pressure on them as well. Certainly not threats of violence, but we need to be putting political pressure on the court right now. We need to keep introducing bills of abolition across the country. Don't let up. We need to push now as much as ever, if not harder than ever. And we'll talk more about that sometime soon. But here's the thing: if this draft opinion turns into a real opinion, they really do overturn Roe. The first real debate on Roe versus Wade and on abortion will begin to happen, as it hasn't happened in 49 years, because the Supreme Court has basically told the country, "Hey, you don't need to have an opinion on abortion. We do." So, you've got to follow us. Your opinion doesn't matter. So a lot of people are like, "Okay, well, I guess why do I need to form an opinion? It doesn't matter." But now it will matter because their votes will matter. They will be perceived as mattering, and so people start deciding, like, wait, what is my opinion on this? So it's an important time. The fields are white to harvest. We need to be preaching the gospel. We need to be preaching that children, from the moment of fertilization, are made in the image of God, and deserving equal protection of the laws as God requires. That we should not show partiality, and we need to provide equal protection as the Constitution requires. So that's what we should be doing in the short term. Um, we need to be continue preaching. Again, like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean this is going to go back to the states. There's going to be a fight in Congress. We need to be ready for that, gearing up for that right now, and in the states. We need to continue fighting in the states as well. So that's what we should do in the short term. So what should we do in the longer term? We need to do what we've always done, which is, regardless of whether the Supreme Court ends up overturning Roe or not, our position is the same. States have a right to do it. States have not just a right, but a duty before God and a duty under the Constitution to provide equal protection to every preborn child from the moment of fertilization, regardless of what the Supreme Court says. And our position on that has not changed, regardless of what the Supreme Court does here. Which their opinion on this, their actual opinion will probably be released in June, is what we're anticipating. But we're not sure. So our position is still the same. We want equal protection and nothing less than equal protection for every single human being from the moment of fertilization, from the moment of conception. That's what the Constitution requires, and that's what we need to be fighting for it at the congressional level and in states. And we need to be repenting and preaching the gospel. We need to be preaching the gospel because, again, there's over 2,300 abortions happening almost on average every day by women who are willingly taking their children to be slaughtered. That demand is still there because that sin is still there. But you know what? The blood of Jesus is sufficient to cover the blood of those who come to him, and to cover the sins of those who come to him in repentance. And so that's what we will be preaching. That's what we will be continuing to say. And we're not going to shy away from saying that abortion is murder, that it's a sin, and that it's evil, and that those who committed it have committed an evil, murderous sin against God and against that life. We're going to say that, and we're not going to apologize for that. But what I am going to say is that God can save murderers. God does save murderers. He has saved many murderers, and he can save you if you will repent They seek Him and follow Him. And so that's what we say to everyone. That's what we've said before this. That's what we'll say after this. That's what we'll continue to say. And we're going to continue to fight for the true abolition of abortion and equal protection from the moment of fertilization for every single baby. So again, is this something to be encouraged by? Absolutely yes. But this battle is far from over. In many ways, it's just begun. And so we need to not let our guard down. It's time to put the armor on and fight harder than ever. And the fact this is going to take away a lot of excuses for people who have not been entering into this fight. It's going to take away their excuses. And so there needs to be more people than ever fighting harder than ever for equal protection, because babies are still being murdered and they will continue to be murdered. And this case doesn't change that. So we got to keep on fighting for the true abolition of abortion in Texas, in Louisiana, where I'm going to testify tomorrow for a bill of abolition that I wrote that's been filed there that we're really excited about. I'm going there to testify, so please be praying for that and keep fighting. So thank y'all so much. Feel free to share this around, let people know, be encouraged, but there's still a lot of fighting left to do and a lot that people just aren't aware of. So you need to make them aware. Please, I hope this has given you some more information you can make people aware of. Thanks. God bless.